Everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome, everyone, to the July 22nd City Council meeting. Welcome to everyone at home and everyone here. And the first thing on our agenda, as always, is the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues, except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if you know it. The timer light indicates the time you have to speak. The red light indicates that your time's up. So, we have 17 people signed up to speak. First up is Carol Berg Caldwell, followed by Leslie Robinette.
Thank you. Carol Berg Caldwell, 2510 Augusta. Our counselor is Zelenka, who serves our ward very well in our whole city. Thank you, Helen. This is a letter I'd like to read to you. You'll each get a copy, but it's mostly for audience in Metrovision because it is a commendation letter for the unsung heroines and heroes that I've had the pleasure of observing for over 40 months at Eugene Municipal Court. Greetings. While it was a recent action by one court staffer, Debbie, who sits to the right of judges in court, which prompts this general commendation of all staffers who interact there with clients, her notable human skills highlights the compelling work of all court staffers. I can think of no public sector work that can be more challenging than court work. The frame of mind of most court clients is often anxiety, resentment, or fear. I have consistently seen in 40 months of nearly daily court observings how personally, courteously, calmly all court staff interact with the public that is so very often anxious and troubled. It makes a huge difference that Muni Court staff have these amazing people skills. I see time and again how previously agitated or anxious court clients get the solid help they need from these clerks delivered in courteous human ways. We are fortunate in our community for this. Special kudos for how Debbie greets court clients in the actual courtroom setting just prior to when judges arrive. She delivers general announcements courteously calmly, steps that court clients need to know about before they appear before judges. She offers a general apology should she happen to mispronounce a name, i.e. names from other countries and cultures, said with a smile. She greets men who approach her for forms that need filling out with the word sir. I see how this is received by men who may be unhoused, low or no income, and I wonder how often, if ever, these unhoused men ever hear the word sir out in community, but they do hear this from Debbie. I see how young and other men of color are also greeted with the word sir, and I wonder too if these men of color hear the word sir when out in our community, but they do hear this respectful, polite word from Debbie at Muni Court. I've no doubt whatsoever that the kindnesses, courtesies, and professionalism that people receive from all staffers at Muni has a direct impact on successful cooperative resolutions and results. I believe it does encourage more people to also want to act with kindness and courtesies and responsibility to resolve matters. Resolving matters responsibly and smoothly is significant, but the human factor and the human impact is much, much larger. So good for Debbie and for all of the unsung heroines and heroes who do serve our community at Eugene Municipal Court. And I do want to say that I am simply an independent volunteer there. I'm not really officially part of the court, but I do so love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Les Robinette, followed by Duncan Rhodes.
Okay. Well, as you know,
You want to introduce yourself?
everybody knows who I am.
No, I know, but that's what you have
Okay.
to do. Put it on record.
My name is Leslie James Robinette, and I know that we've been hearing a lot about this homeless situation, okay? Well, you know, I'm currently homeless. But, okay, it's like also I told Kitty today. Okay, the wetlands are being closed, which is probably about 150 to 200 people out there. Okay, fine. We got all these actual services, okay, that are good for the actual daytime. But what about at the nighttime? Okay, come on. It's like everybody's dancing around the issue, and it's like, well, let's get it fixed. I mean, I know it's not going to take tomorrow to fix it, but I think there should be on the ballot somewhere to go with this situation, so that quote that also take from what Abraham Lincoln said at Gettysburg, governed for the people and by the people, which the homeless is still part of the community, whichever way you look at it. And I feel like that we, as the homeless, are not being represented on a lot of issues. All right, like I said, I'm one of them, and I don't speak for Sleeps. I don't speak with Occupy. Okay, I have dealt with them, but I'm here to represent myself. And you know, it's hard being back out, guaranteed. Okay, my deceased girlfriend died homeless. So it's like, yeah, that's why I've picked up actually the kind of this homeless situation thing. And, you know, it's like, okay, it's like, where do we, because I can also tell you expansion is good, okay, but it also comes back to you really need to hear about the homeless situation. All right, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but that's just the way it is. That's all I got.
Thank you very much. Next is Duncan Rhodes, followed by Paula Erickson.
I'm Duncan Rhodes, and I'm in Claire Surrett's ward, and I'd like to speak about the Willamette Street redesign coming up. I live in the Whitaker, and my daughter lives down what would be 50th and Willamette if such an intersection existed. And I primarily go down there to play with grandchildren, tote them back and forth to school, different stuff. And I very seldom ride my bike. I like to ride my bike when I can. I'm old and fat and I need the exercise. But the hills are too steep and I could be toting a kid around. I virtually never drive on Willamette Street because the thing is just a miserable excuse for a road. Although my primary means is car going to that neighborhood, I find it dangerous to drive on because you've got 2 lanes each way with people zipping back and forth between lanes and trying to get past the guy that's making a left turn or get past the guy making a right turn. From the standpoint of a motorist, I think that a center turn lane, 2 travel lanes, and a couple of bike lanes would be nicer for all concerned. At the moment, I very rarely use it. I use Lincoln, or if I'm coming from the east side of town, Hilliard, and go up the back by Safeway. It's just a nasty street to drive on, and I personally don't see any point whatsoever in continuing with the status quo, which isn't working. That's my 2 cents on that. On another subject, I would encourage all of you to attend Da Vinci Days in Corvallis. I just came back from that. That's why I have this toasted appearance. And it's an excellent thing going on there, and I think that Eugene ought to attempt to put together a sculpture or hold their own event in the same venue. If you've never seen it, it's really a great thing. That's it. Thank you.
Paula Erickson is next, followed by Patrice Dotson.
My name is Paula Erickson, and I'm the president of GEARS, Greater Eugene Area Riders. And I'm going to read our request for Willamette. We are sponsoring option 3, or speaking up for option 3, 3 lanes with bike lanes, and for the following reasons. Bike lanes on Willamette affirm bicycling as a legitimate transportation option and provide a safe, designated place for bicycle travel. Without bike lanes, bicycle travel on Willamette is restricted to occasional use by only experienced, confident riders. Bike lanes will allow all of the bicycle riders to access destinations on Willamette Street. Gears uses adjacent streets, especially Oak Street, on recreational rides to get around Willamette Street, but these are no substitute for on-street access to ride to destinations located on that street. Gears encourages government to develop better bicycling facility, so Gears participated in the creation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle master plan, which clearly identifies the need for bike lanes on Willamette Street. Gears defends both the rights and responsibilities of bicycle riders for transportation, pleasure, and health. Bicyclists have the right to ride safely to destinations on Willamette Street and the responsibility to respect the rights of pedestrians to walk safely on the sidewalks. Bike lanes are needed to support the rights and responsibilities of bicycle riders. Thank you for hearing our point of view.
Next up is Patrice Dodson, followed by James Chastain.
My name is Patrice Dotson, and I live in Ward 1. I want to thank you for the improvement to the street corners. I live near 18th and Polk, and the corner is so much easier to access with a walker. I really do appreciate sidewalks that are smooth and easy to use with a walker. I'm here tonight as the angel of shelter. Last time I spoke in this capacity, over a year ago, I asked you to please provide some pieces of property where the homeless could sleep at night. That does not seem to be progressing very well. I do watch every city council meeting from my home. I think some of you are having a hard time agreeing about what is needed. When the Mayor's Council on Working with the Homeless was having meetings 2 years ago, the homeless were quite clear about what they wanted and needed: property. They said, give us some land and we'll take care of the rest. At your meetings, it seems that you are really overworking this need, talking about vetting, having places to store belongings, having someone on the property to keep watch, creating databases. This is not what the homeless need urgently right now. What the homeless need right now are pieces of land where they can stay overnight. Not live there all day, not camp there, just sleep overnight from p.m. to a.m., a place where they will not be awakened and told to move on. Let's just start with that. And one piece of property is not enough. There are so many who need places to sleep now, we need several parcels of property. It does seem that such land is available and merely needs a vote to make it usable for sleeping at night. I implore you to act on this as a group to make it happen sooner rather than later. It would be wonderful if the city could be divided into parts and each part could take responsibility for seeing that the homeless were included. But wait, we already have such divisions. They are called wards. Maybe each ward could share the responsibility for creating a space for the homeless somewhere in their ward. That way, everyone is equally contributing to the solution to this serious problem. I hope the next time I come here, it will be to thank you for solving this dilemma. Thank you.
James Chastain is next, followed by Josh Scove.
My name is James Chastain. I'm with Sleeps in Occupy, and I don't know what ward I'm in. I'm homeless. Anyway, safe, legally entitled emergency places to sleep. That's what we need, and that's what a lot of people in Eugene already have. But people that are unhoused don't seem to have those things right now, and I know you all are aware. And I'm wondering what happened to the designated places to sleep. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's really been stressful. And it's very hot out there. The deal about the wetlands, I understand that there's people there that don't need to be there, and they probably don't want to be there, but that's the only place that they have to go. And a lot of people are displaced, and what they need is a place from point A to point B. Where are they going to go now? They're all going to be displaced again. These 150 or 200 people, however many there are, they're going to have to go somewhere, and I'm sure that some of them are going to go back to the same property. And I think the reason this is happening is because the city has not found any way for them, a place to go right now. And if the city had a place for them to go, the BLM wouldn't be having these problems. If the city could provide, or some kind of places for them to go, designated areas. And anyway, the delay is the reason people are on the wetlands. And I think that if somehow you guys can do this really quick and help the people that need help, because there's a lot of people. So where are they going to go? We have to put them somewhere. And I'm homeless too, and I'm not living on the wetlands, but where I was, I did, clean up the area with, got a dumpster and everything. I'm sure that some of the people over there that have money in their pocket could have done the same thing. But I think they need to go to meetings and learn stuff, how to do stuff like that, put their money together. They haven't been told what to do. And some people want to be responsible, and some people are not responsible. But it's not everybody. I know there's messes out there. And some people are just not clean. There's clean people, there's non-clean people, and that's the way we all are in the whole world. You look at some people's houses, and it's not as clean as another person. So, people do have problems. And medical reasons, in the heat in the summertime, I'm diabetic. I've been having spells for the last few weeks. I've had my items ripped off at Keezy, my backpack, and my bicycle.
Thank you. Josh Scove is next, followed by Laura Potter.
Joshua Scove, 2036 Willamette, Ward 1. And as always, hello to Aria and Jasmine watching at home before bedtime. Good evening, mayors and councilors, especially Councilors Surratt and Evans. I've barely been back to address this body since you two have been here. And the rest of you, my apologies that you have to hear me again. But thank you all of you, thank you to all of you seriously for your service. I know it takes a lot. I'm here to talk about South Willamette Street, and you would probably expect me to just come out in favor of improved bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Indeed, I am in favor of multimodal options wherever they work. You would expect me to spend my 3 minutes telling you why alternative 3, the option I call the 5-lane option, with its bike lanes, good sidewalks protected by those bike lanes, and 3 ample car lanes, is best. But I'm not actually here to speak to you about that alternative tonight, though I'll probably be back another time. I think you'll hear about that from others on this count in detail tonight and in coming weeks. Instead, I'm going to ask you to look beyond that decision to the priorities that will soon follow. First, and I ask you to stick with a hypothetical for just 2 minutes, and in some cases perhaps even suspend disbelief, if that's what it takes. I'm going to assume that you will ultimately vote overwhelmingly, perhaps even unanimously, for these 5 lanes. I think that ultimately when you consider the traffic impacts, the economic promise for business and property owners, the opportunity to revitalize that stretch of an important street, and public safety improvements and other factors, you will vote to stick to the policy framework that you and previous councils have, through hard work and public input and staff analysis and many work sessions, put together. The framework includes an almost overwhelming mosaic of policies, plans, and goals, and I think that when you consider them, you will ultimately agree with yourselves. I'm thinking of Envision Eugene, the Transportation System Plan, the Council-approved goal to reduce the community's fossil fuel use by half between 2005 and 2030, the Community Climate and Energy Action Plan, and of course the Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan. I know I've left out pieces of state law and other things as well. So instead, I'd ask you to think beyond that and start thinking now about how best to prepare for and leverage this inevitable improvement to South Willamette in 2 ways. First, to ensure the maximum economic opportunity for businesses and property owners, and second, to do outreach now or very soon about construction in that corridor, as construction is inevitable regardless of the alternative that is selected. I say this to you, of course, as a member of the general public, but unofficially as someone who has sat on the MX Steering Committee and the West Eugene MX Corridor Committee over the past 3 years. Ultimately, this body voted to support the expansion of that system in West Eugene, and I believe the decision was largely about our overall vision that we've worked hard to put together and about the economic opportunity that a newly integrated transportation and land use system could deliver. Thank you for your time, careful deliberation, and your open minds to staff guidance and analysis.
Next up, Laura Potter, and followed by Reagan Clark.
Good evening, Laura Potter, 1401 Willamette Street. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. I testified last week on the downtown code amendments, which I believe you are making a decision on later tonight. And in listening to your follow-up comments and work session, I sensed some trepidation on part of the council. I just want to come back and say a few more things. These amendments, as I said last week, work to facilitate a dense mixed-use development desired in the downtown. I think they're a small piece of a much larger puzzle, but they are part of that Envision Eugene implementation that will be very important. And it will take many rounds of amendments like this to get from where we are now to the goals that we've set, but these are a very important first step. I also just wanted to say that a lot of developers and downtown business people, the chamber, other people worked to provide input on these code amendments, and while they do work to address the density that we want to achieve as part of Envision Eugene, they also work to clean up some challenges in the existing code. So they really do work to improve some things that have been in the code that have been frustrations, that have been impediments, that just could be cleaned up a little bit. And so they do that, and that's I think a really helpful thing. And I know all of the developers and business people that gave their feedback really did so based on experiences they've had and see these as kind of a step to improving that. So again, I think they're a small piece, and I think we'll need to do more work. By themselves, they certainly do not get us from point A to where we want to get, but they are that first step that we need to take. So I encourage you to support those and pass them this evening. Thank you very much.
Reagan Clark is next, followed by Marina Hajek.
Greetings. My name is Reagan Clark. I reside in Ward 7. I am a formerly houseless disabled Marine Corps veteran. If I may, I would like to help you see the world through my eyes, if only for a few moments. When I walk into a room, I immediately survey it for threats. It is what I've been trained to do, and after a while, it gets mentally exhausting. I was never in combat. My training was reinforced by my childhood PTSD from being the victim of an abusive sociopath that enjoyed beating little boys. I got over it, but the scars remain. Some of these veterans have wounds that have never healed. Currently, approximately 30% of the homeless people that walk our streets are veterans, and 43% of our nation's veterans are on food stamps. After finding this out a couple of years ago, I experienced the plight of homeless veterans firsthand. I stayed in shelters when I traveled to California to do the Veterans Sustainable Agriculture Training course, as well as staying in local shelters when I arrived here with nothing but what I could carry on my back. I found conditions in the shelters that I would equate with how felons are treated in prisons. These are the men and women that fought for our freedoms and are treated as criminals themselves. This is unacceptable. And fortunately, our federal government agrees with me. There currently exists a mandate to end veteran homelessness by 2015. However, I was shocked and distressed when I heard about the sweeps of the homeless around town, particularly around West Eugene Wetlands, a place I knew to be the home of some veterans with severe PTSD, such that they cannot deal with being exposed to a large number of people because they find it mentally exhausting to have to be hypervigilant all the time. However, there is no safe place for them to be. They have to worry about drug addicts coming into their camps to steal their possessions. If that is not enough, then they have to worry about some official coming and telling them that they cannot be there. It is no wonder that they don't trust. I am working on a program to house these veterans. provide them with social services that they need, and the vocational training that will enable them to contribute to the economic vitality of their communities, and, at the same time, deal with the widespread economic weakness that plagues us today. So my plea to this body is to assist me in this cause. As an afterthought, about what causes homelessness in other populations, if PTSD is so prevalent in the veteran population, does this hold true with others? How many of the other victims of domestic violence no longer have the coping skills needed for a so-called normal life? What horrible things have and continue to happen that force them to the margins of society? These are all bright-eyed children at some point. What happened to destroy their innocence? And can we see that child in them still, that they just want to be loved and understood? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marina Hychek is next, followed by Eugene Drix.
Good evening, dear councilors. My name is Marina Hayek. I live in 2410 Madison Street, Eugene. On behalf of the Raise the Driving Age in Oregon campaign, I'm here to please ask you to consider the option number 3 for South Willamette Street. We don't want to make it a faster street. We already have too many vehicles that are driving too fast and not following the driving speed. My daughter, I want to tell you about my daughter that we encourage her to bicycle and to walk because of the health benefits and environmentally too. We live on 24th Street and we have to 24th Street and Madison. We try to access the bicycle path, bicycle lanes on 28, following Madison South on 28, but it's very difficult to cross 28 in the morning with so much traffic, the peak hours. And it's not a safety crossing too. Then I was talking with the traffic engineer, Mr. Larson, about that issue, and we talked about, okay, let's explore the possibility of walking. We go over the hill on 23 to access again 24 to go to Roosevelt School, and there are no sidewalks. So I please ask you to consider option 3 because we want to make it friendly and safer for pedestrians. There is Envision Eugene in 20 years that, according to the plans that I saw, there are many residential area apartments that you want to be building there. I just imagine that the residents, the families that will be moving there is because they are attracted to the school district. And I can envision Eugene, South Willamette, with many more pedestrians walking to the school areas. So let's just make it safer, please. Thank you.
Eugene Drix is next, followed by David Gazzara.
Gee, it's good to be here. It's good to see you, Gene, again. And thank you all for missing me when I'm not here. I miss me too. Public speaking is usually everybody's most terrifying thing to do, but I seem to be able to do it. And the reason is because I'm talking to you, and you're my town. And what's kind of interesting about it is that I'm not necessarily talking to you. I'm talking to the you that was, the you that were. I came here at 19, and this town was just so good to me. They reinforced me and encouraged me. And all those people, that I can't even name them anymore, but God, they were good to me. So I'm giving back, and I'm giving back to you all, and it seems to work because people stop me in grocery stores and say, we like you on TV. We bring the kids out in the other room when you're on. And I got to tell you, being here, you're not aware of TV at all. You're just being folk, which is kind of how it all is. It really is. I mean, but that's not what I wanted to talk about, and I can't read my notes, so here we go. I'm kind of eccentric, as you know, and I'm out there, and I'm also very intelligent, so I'm not crazy. But I do know that the future is going to be new, and new is always different, and we have to adjust to it, whatever it is. Computers, look how we're all doing that, and everyone knows by now, if you don't know computers, know somebody who does, and they can help you translate. But there's going to be a lot of other things coming at us that just seem so strange, so different. But we just got to all embrace the learning curve and work with it. And there's no way around it because we've got the internet. What a beautiful tool that is. Every one of us has got power and voice, and I like to think that World War II gave us the internet. We won that, and now we've got so much freedom it scares countries, scares companies. Yes, that's great. But something crossed my mind a while ago during one of my pondering moments, and I just wanted to kind of relay it here and stick this thought in everyone's head. I always kid with Eugene because it's you, and it's kind of fun to reanalyze all that. Well, to me, it's just me. But when I say you, it's not me. And when you say me, it's you, me. But to me, it's you. So somehow together, we have Eugene. But it's always easy to point the finger at a you, but it isn't necessarily a you. It makes you think about it, and then it becomes a we gene, which we have fun with that term, but it does show a community. And then it gets even bigger. When there's a whole lot of us, it's an us, which is what our country's named. And the thing that I wanted to point out is that it takes all of us to make us work. And it takes the homeless, it takes the eccentrics, it takes the learned, it takes you, John. It takes all of us. And when some of that's frustrating, just kind of embrace it. And here comes my seconds and learning curve. But it takes all of us to make us. And ain't it great? Thank you.
David Gazzara is next, followed by Paul Lightman.
My name's David Gazzara, and I live in Betty Taylor's ward. I'm a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I work with GEARS Greater Eugene Area Riders. I'm a registered nurse. I volunteer with Whitebird Medical Center and work with Whitebird at the Oregon Country Fair. For years, Sunday night around 9 p.m., the Pacific Northwest folk singer Jim Page puts on a concert along the Oregon Country Fair loop. This past last Sunday night at the fair, Jim moved me to tears when he sang written about the white bicycles placed as memorials to bicycle riders killed in collisions with motorists. Part of the song goes, bicycles all over town, memorialized among the stars with wild flowers on your handlebars, bicycles as free as a breeze. What more could be more humane than these? Like pedal birds. That's what we are. He calls bicyclists pedal birds. I love that. I've heard this song before, but as Jim sang it, I thought of the ghost bikes in Eugene and just couldn't help feeling tearful and sad about the wonderful pedal birds we've lost in our town. And then I came back from the fair and got an email from Susan and John Miner, whose own much-loved lost pedal bird son lost his life in a bicycle collision that's remembered now by a ghost bike at the corner of 13th and Willamette. And they are moved to be willing to give a considerable amount of money to a project that would provide safe routes for the large increase in bicyclists who will soon be traveling between the new student housing projects and the U of O campus. Their generosity moved me to tears again. It's long past time that the city of Eugene should consistently and appropriately design the transportation facility of our town to support us all. Walkers, riders, skaters, and drivers together safely. Jim's song goes on to say that long time ago somebody invented a wheel, said this is going to be a big deal. Humanity is going to have to decide whether to asphyxiate itself or go for a ride. Get out of that dinosaur, leave it behind, write a poem, sing a song. Life goes on, and so get back on and ride for everybody who's ever ridden before. And this is the important part. And then ride some more. We need to build some more the roads to make it safe for the pedal birds, the people who are driving their autos less because it's a good idea, an idea that can literally save us all. What can be more humane than that? I am joined by other pedal birds tonight. They are smart, brave, loving people.
Thank you.
Hear their wisdom. They're your friends.
Thank you. Paul Lightman is next, followed by Mark Schlossberg.
My name is Paul Lightman. I live at 601 West 11th Avenue. I'm here representing LiveMove, a transportation and livability group at the University of Oregon that works to advance our own education as students, but also put ideas into action for the benefit of the larger community. This past year, LiveMove worked on a project evaluating 13th Avenue between the UO and downtown. With the new capstone apartments, we saw a need for improved bicycle access and safety for the influx of new residents, not to mention the thousands of other existing 13th Avenue users and the many more potential users along this key corridor. Building on the already existing design of Alder adjacent to campus, LiveMove designed a two-way separated cycle track along 13th Avenue to address issues of safety. A cycle track is just a bicycle lane that has more separation between bikes and cars, which improves safety for all users. Many bicyclists coming from the UO on 13th Avenue travel against the flow of traffic, posing a serious safety risk. We discovered at some intersections as many as 39% of all bicycle traffic travel in the opposite direction. We believe this behavior to be a strong indication of where people on bikes want to travel. Currently, there is no direct, convenient, and safe route from campus to downtown. 12th and 15th Avenues are awkward, less direct, and less efficient. 11th Avenue is too busy for many people's comfort. Our proposed redesign of 13th Avenue offers a direct, safe, and comfortable link and way to link downtown with the UO campus. All city plans to date support this type of infrastructure. Improving bicycle safety and accessibility is a major step to attract more people to active modes of transportation, decreasing gas emissions, and improving the livability of our community. Envision Eugene, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Strategic Plan, and the Climate and Energy Action Plan all call for improved bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and developing a safe network that is integrated with surrounding land uses. A cycle track on 13th Avenue is a tangible way to put these community plans into action. As many of you know, the Minor family lost their son in 2008 in a bicycle accident at 13th Avenue in Willamette. They recognize the importance of safe infrastructure along the corridor. Following LiveMove's public presentation of our concept, attended by city staff, UO staff, and 100 other members of the community, the Miners wrote to Mayor Piercy that as a way to honor their son's commitment to the community, the University of Oregon, and to cycling, they will make a substantial financial donation to help bring LiveMove's concept to reality. In many ways, the design is not groundbreaking. It builds on existing design of Alder, is a design that many other communities have implemented, and is based almost exclusively on reallocating space on 13th Avenue with paint. Improving the safety of the corridor, however, is significant. Similar infrastructure has been implemented in many cities across the country, and many cities have developed stress-free bicycle networks that can be used by people of all ages. Thank you, and I ask that you take the necessary steps to make 13th Avenue a safe and inviting corridor.
Mark Schlossberg is next, followed by Judy Horseman.
I don't think I see a yellow light coming on.
Oh. It's not working?
We can't program it.
Oh.
That wasn't me.
No. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's a bonus to see Drix. Hi. My name is Mark Schlossberg. I live in Alan Zelenka's district ward. I'm here for a few different reasons. I moved here to Eugene in 2001 and have raised 3 children, 2 who are now in high school, unbelievably, and 1 in middle school. And kids that I'm raising to try to get around and be independent and mobile and try to see as much of this great town as possible. And they're not legally allowed to drive, and so I want them to experience this community by bus, by walking, by transit. I'm also here as a husband, and my wife has done a career change since being here, and now she's a speech therapist working with preschoolers around town and trying to ride her bike as much as possible. And it's fun listening to the stories of what works and doesn't work in our community that way. And I'm also here as a professor of city and regional planning at the University of Oregon, and one of a handful of experts around the country that focus exclusively on redesigning our cities to make it more able to walk and bike as a normal part of everyday life for normal, everyday people trying to do their normal, everyday thing. I also volunteered yesterday at the Sunday Streets, hence the informal purple sweatshirt, and I hope that all of you get a chance to severely or extremely praise city staff for putting on a fantastic event. It was so great to see so many people out and about, just enjoying walking, biking, skating in our city streets, and really showing off the rejuvenated and vibrant economic activity happening downtown. It's really exciting. And when I hear about the opportunities to retrofit Willamette and these opportunities to retrofit 13th, that's what I'm thinking about. That these are not just corridors for people on bikes to get by, to get through, or corridors for people on foot to walk through, or corridors for people to drive through. This is about making place, about creating robust, vibrant, economically viable locations to make Eugene one of the most livable mid-sized cities in the country, and that's what I'm really passionate about. And I'm extremely thrilled and grateful and amazed at the impressive work that the students have done on their year-long research project to redesign 13th, to connect Capstone and its 1,200 new students to the University of Oregon via a direct, safe design that builds on the amazing infrastructure that's been done on Alder. I'm thrilled that some students of mine were key in designing the Alder design, and a former student was a lead champion in making that into a reality. And I'm even more proud of the students over this last year who volunteered their time. They did not receive academic credit. They did not get paid. And to give their time to redo 13th to create a direct, safe, comfortable, family-friendly corridor between campus and Capstone. I urge your support. Thank you.
Judy Horstman is next, followed by Susan Stump.
Good evening. My name is Judy Horstman, and I live in Ward 3. And I'm also a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And tonight I'd like to talk to you about safety on 30th Avenue between Hilliard and University. Camas Ridge Elementary School is adjacent to a portion of that segment, yet it has no marked crosswalks at the intersections adjacent to the school. There is a pedestrian bridge over 30th, which was built before ADA regulations were in place, and that bridge is inaccessible to people who cannot negotiate stairs, including parents using strollers or bike carts. There is an LTD bus stop at University, and last year that intersection, 30th and University, was the site of a near-fatal collision involving an alter-abled person trying to cross the street. So some pedestrian cyclists and transit riders who cross 30th regularly have asked the city to install additional safe and convenient crossings. Staff are working on that, and there's a 30th Avenue crossing improvement project, which is on their website if you want more information. A recent speed study done near University Street showed the 85th percentile speed of eastbound vehicles to be 44 miles per hour, westbound to be 42, which is well above the 35 mile per hour posted speed limit. But of more concern to me is the number of vehicles per hour traveling more than 55 miles per hour, 97 eastbound and 47 westbound. I find this to be unsatisfactory. I volunteer at Camas Ridge Elementary School, and I am concerned about the safety of the students, their parents, and the neighbors. There was a meeting in May of interested people to talk about the problems, and a survey of attendees identified traffic speed and crossing accessibility as the most important issues. One important tool for reducing speed on the street is speed limit enforcement. And as counselors, you have the power to direct the Eugene Police Department to conduct speed enforcement events. And I strongly encourage you to do so. We do not want to rely on luck for the safety of our citizens, and so I encourage you to be proactive on this issue. Thanks very much for your time.
Susan Stump is next, followed by Kelsey Moore.
Hello, my name is Susan Stumpf, and I live in Ward 2. General obligation bond measure 2197, passed in November 2012 by the citizens of Eugene, is expected to generate approximately $8 million annually. Of that amount, you determined that an average of $516,000 should be annually allocated over a period of 5 years to support bicycle and pedestrian projects. Guided by the Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan, city staff, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I want to thank you for your commitment to making Eugene a vibrant, safe, and accessible place to live, work, and play. I love living here and appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the city in all the ways that I do. My family and I attend concerts at the Cuthbert, Shakespeare in the Park, participate in Sunday Streets events, shop at Capella's Markets and Tsunami Bookstore, eat at Holy Cow and Cosmic Pizza. I buy gas for my car and tires for my bicycle in Eugene. I work and I pay taxes. I volunteer and I vote. I voted for the bond measure, and I am thrilled to be here to talk about it tonight. I am a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. You charged us to help guide the allocation of this money. I am here today to congratulate you on your wise choice, as we are an attentive group of folks who are active users of our infrastructure. Collectively, we are aware of the spots that trouble cyclists and pedestrians, from the truly dangerous areas to the problems that cause minor irritation. We have a long list, and we are working with city staff right now to prioritize our Year 1 projects. We are passionate and committed to contributing to creating a system that works for all users. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Last up is Kelsey Moore.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Moore, and I'm in Claire Syrette's ward, and I live at 408 Monroe. So thank you, everyone, for all your testimony about housing, a really important issue. I'm here to talk about another important issue, which is transportation options. It's also another basic human need and human right. I'm here representing a younger demographic, the demographic that cities like Chicago, Seattle, and Indianapolis are fighting about how they're going to bring these young people to their cities by creating better active transportation infrastructure. Google it, amazing quotes, really funny. So I'm happy to be here today. Another demographic that, or I guess another thing that I'm representing is I'm a manager of a business on South Willamette Street. I'm also a daily user of South Willamette Street. I walk, I bike, I occasionally drive. I urge all of you to ask really detailed questions of city staff when they present on Willamette Street. I urge you to ask people if they like turning on the street currently in their cars, if they enjoy walking on the sidewalks, if they enjoy biking on the street. I'm in favor of option 3, which includes the center turn lane, 2 lanes of car traffic in either, or 1 lane of car traffic in either direction, bike lanes, and then improved sidewalks. The reasons for that are turning on Willamette Street into a business is not fun, easy, or convenient. I deeply care about the economic vitality of that area. I'm really excited to see downtown improving and seeing so many people there. I would like to see that for South Willamette. I think the businesses are there. I think the people want to come there. I think the infrastructure is just subpar at the moment. We have a really great opportunity to improve it. So I'd like to see a center turn lane for ease of access to the businesses, also reducing collision rates on the street from the weaving back and forth. If you're not familiar with that, go drive down Willamette Street at rush hour. It's real fun. Also, I'd like to see on-street bicycle access so I don't have to bike on the sidewalk and disturb pedestrians. Also, as a person walking on the street frequently at lunch breaks and things like that, I would like to see cyclists have a designated space on the street so they're not on the sidewalk. Transportation options are important. It's a really great way to improve our city, improve Willamette Street, create a place. I'm really excited about putting more greenery, creating a more vibrant, fun place to come and stay. Right now, you don't come to Willamette and visit one business and think, hey, I'm going to walk to another. It's going to be really great. I'm going to, go someplace I haven't been before. You You get out of your car, you walk into the business you decided you wanted to go to, and you go back to your car. It's a real lost opportunity for our city. Please ask at the city staff who present to you about Willamette Street, ask them about similar examples. This is not a new design by any means. Ask them about similar examples in other streets or in other cities. Thank you.
Thank you. And it close the public forum, and thank everyone for coming and for the wonderful comments and presentations to us. And I ask if any of the council has any comments they want to make. Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who came. And I want to thank Carol Berg Caldwell for her continued interest in government and watching us all and doing a good job of it. The Willamette Street has certainly gotten a lot of attention, and I think we're all listening and thinking about it and hoping to make the best decision. I have heard arguments on both sides. The 30th Avenue crossing, however, is something that I think does not have two sides. I think everyone knows that we need a safe way to get across 30th, and I think it's urgent that we do something about that. It is dangerous for pedestrians of all ages and all types. It's dangerous for, I see people walking their children to school, which is a good thing, but sometimes they have a younger child in a stroller. They can't go up the steps to cross the bridge, and as has been pointed out, people in wheelchairs cannot go up those steps. And it's hard with a bicycle. I have done that, but it's not easy to push it up. And I think that before someone gets killed there, we need to do something. It's even dangerous if you're driving. When I come back into town in my car, I try to go the speed limit. The speed limit, incidentally, should be lower than it is. But if I slow down to the speed limit, there are cars behind me honking and almost running over me. It isn't safe for anybody the way it is. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you all very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is our consent calendar.
I move to approve.
Just a second.
Go ahead. He'll pull them after you.
I do it several ways. Go ahead.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, Claire?
So I wanted to ask to pull two items from the
Yes.
consent calendar. Item C, the approval of the resolution number 5093 annexing land into the city of Eugene, and item F, the approval of the Police Commission FYI 2014-2015 work plan.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. I'd like to pull item B.
Okay. B, C, and F are pulled. Is that any others? Okay. So now we'll vote on the rest of the items, and then we'll come back to those. All those in favor of the rest of the items, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. None in opposition. Those pass. So now we go to item B. Councilor Surratt.
Councilor Brown was, yeah.
B is you.
Yes, Mayor. I looked over the tentative working agenda, and I'm not exactly sure how to do this, whether I need to make a motion to schedule a work session that was approved 15 months ago but never scheduled. It's the work session that is a cost-benefit analysis of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District. I want to schedule that for Wednesday, September 11th. And I guess we have to vote on that. So
Do you want to hear what the manager's response to that?
Yes,
Okay.
I would.
It will be scheduled. Part of it is what we're hoping to do is have a conversation about several pieces that are related around incentives, public investment, public-private partnerships as they relate to the implementation of Envision Eugene. And so we want to have that entire conversation, set that up, and then come back with the individual items as we go.
That doesn't work for me. That doesn't work. This is 15 months ago. I submitted my questions 3 or 4 months ago. Nothing's been answered. Nothing's been scheduled. The work session poll, which was approved, said nothing about Envision Eugene. It said a cost-benefit analysis of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District. You said your intention is to schedule it. I've been waiting 15 months. It's not scheduled in through the end of this year, and I think that's pretty outrageous. So I would like the council to vote and schedule it on the day that I requested.
So your motion is?
My motion is to hold the approved work session on the cost-benefit analysis of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District on Wednesday, September 11th,
Second.
2013.
Moved and seconded. Okay, I don't
I'll
see...
speak to it.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, I've watched and I've supported many other councilors' work sessions. Why do they get scheduled like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? This has been almost a year and a half. I agreed to postpone it until after the election, the last election, but that was in May. It's 2.5 months after the election. I did not want it bundled in a larger examination of so-called public-private partnerships. I just hope that something like this never happens to one of my fellow councilors' work requests. I think it's pretty outrageous. And, we can have the other conversation about the other public-private partnership and Envision Eugene and all that, but I asked for this almost a year and a half ago, and I think it's time to talk about it.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I absolutely disagree with my colleague on the issue of urban renewal at the riverfront area, but I absolutely will vote for this because I agree with him. And all of us go through this process of trying to deal with stuff we think is important, and we follow the process of asking for a work session, and when we do, this is too much time to have to wait. And so I'll vote in favor of that. I'll disagree with you on the topic, but I think you're right. You deserve to have the work session you asked for. And I hope we'll address this issue in a process session next time. What's the scheduling window that we should see after a successful poll has taken place?
Councilor Zelenka?
I agree with all of that. I might suggest that there's an open work session on the 9th. And the 11th has 2 topics on it, so you could even do it sooner than that.
Can I respond? Can I respond? That's cool, but it's got all the committee reports and all that stuff on it, too, and
Yes, I know.
I won't accept it. It's a friendly amendment.
So can we go back to me calling on people?
Sorry. Pardon me.
Sorry, Mayor.
Thanks.
I thought I was supposed to respond.
No.
Sorry.
All right. All right.
You accepted that as a friendly amendment? No.
No.
Okay.
All right. So I don't see anybody else in the queue. So all those in favor of Councilor Brown's motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In opposition, 1. It passes. Okay. Now we're. Move to approve B. Goodness, people. B as amended. All those in favor? 8 in favor, none in opposition. It passes. Now we're on to item C.
So I will start with an apology. I'm flying a little blind on this one. I received a call from a constituent asking me to pull this resolution for annexation from the consent calendar, and I did not get a chance to speak with that constituent. Her message said there were concerns about what the folks plan to do with the development of the land. So I did leave the person a message saying I would see what was possible, that if there was, even if we did the annexation, if there was further development on the property, that would most likely be subject to some kind of public process. So I don't have a strong reason other than that there was a request from a constituent to pull this from the consent agenda. And so I'm actually not exactly sure what the next move would be. Would I move to recommend a public hearing might be my next step. So I would be open to advice.
Yes, Councilor. My name is Steve Oakes with Planning. So the options are to pull it, discuss it, and vote on it, or to set a future public hearing for the annexation. This property is in an area that's designated for something different than it is right now, so it would need to go through a zone change in the future. It's designated for commercial and medium density, so it would need to have any kind of real redevelopment potential, would need to go through a future zone change, which does include public process also, though, just for to kind of put the issues out there.
Okay, thank you. So with that information, I will see if I get a second on a motion to defer action until council holds a public hearing on the proposed annexation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further conversation? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In opposition? 1, 2, 3. It passes. And then we go to item C as amended. So that would be all those in favor of that. Please indicate. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Sorry, Mayor, would you repeat that? I didn't hear.
It's just one more vote on the same thing.
Okay.
As amended.
As amended. So can I see your hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. It passes. All right. Now we're on to item F.
Councilor Clark voted no on that last
sorry.
motion. So item F, I asked to pull the approval of the work plan, partly because we have our chair and vice chair here and wanted to give them an opportunity to answer any questions that might come up, and also because, as Councilor Zelenko pointed out, normally we do have these as separate agenda items and not part of our consent calendar. So
the city manager had talked with Councilor Zelenka and had suggested that we schedule a work session for a presentation.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. You can still take action tonight if you'd
vote
like,
on
and then we
it.
can still come back and provide you with a work session.
Councilor Zelenka?
I'm fine with that. I just think as a matter of protocol, we have people that we appoint to these commissions, and they do a lot of work for the city and spend a lot of time. And I think out of respect, we should at least meet with them at least once a year to talk to them about their work plan, what they've been doing, and have a face-to-face meeting with them. I actually prefer multiple times a year, even if it's shorter amount of time, maybe 15 minutes, come on back to us and talk to us, and so we have more interactions. But I don't really think that it's an appropriate way to do this through emails and memos. I think we should actually have all of our commission work plans approved in person.
I think we understand that we would like to hear from you. So thank you for being here tonight, and we will schedule a work session, okay? Thank you. Is that okay?
And so we'll defer action on adopting the work plan until after.
That's up to you. We could adopt it, and you could have the presentation.
Okay. I would move to adopt the work plan and have a follow-up work session with the commission members.
No problem with that?
No problem.
So we'll leave that off for tonight.
No, we will. I said move to adopt the work plan.
Oh, tonight?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes.
All right. And you had a second?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'll support that. I've read through the work plan, and it looks really good. I don't have a problem with that. It would be nice to have a presentation from the commissioners, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're ready to vote on that. All those in favor, please indicate. 8 in favor, none in opposition. It passes. And then you need one more vote on that as amended. All those in favor, please indicate. 8 in favor, none in opposition. It passes. All right. Then
Look, here.
we're done. All right. Here we go. So we're going to open the public hearing on the ordinance suspending multi-unit property tax exemption. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a public hearing on the proposed ordinance to extend the suspension of the multi-unit property tax exemption program to give council additional time to consider potential program modifications. Based on the suspension ordinance that council adopted in May, the suspension currently expires on August 31st. Council has recently provided direction to bring back an ordinance extending the suspension through January 31st, 2014. Action on this proposed ordinance is scheduled for July 24th. We will be forwarding a recommendation to council following this public hearing and prior to the 24th work session.
Okay, and we have one person signed up to speak on this, Laura Potter.
Hello again. Laura Potter, testifying on behalf of the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. Our address is 1401 Willamette Street. As I think you all know by now, we are longtime supporters of the MUPTI program. We believe it is a critical tool and an important piece of downtown redevelopment. We also see the MUPTI tool as a crucial part of implementation for Envision Eugene. I served on the Citizen Resource Group for Envision Eugene and on the Technical Resource Group. During our analysis on the Technical Resource Group, we did a substantial amount of work on the redevelopment, particularly the redevelopment on commercial corridors, and we assumed MUPTI as a tool. And in fact, our analysis was all based on MUPTI being in place. So it's our belief that at the very least, if there was no longer a MUPTI, you would have to go back and redo all that analysis. I believe that you would not be able to, the Envision Eugene would look very different without MUPTI, that you could no longer assume that redevelopment on commercial at that rate, and you would have to find those multifamily units elsewhere, whether that be by expanding the urban growth boundary or by upzoning current lower density land to higher density land. So all of that is to say, the Chamber, we support MUPTI, we want to see it in place. However, we recognize that this has become a significant challenge in the community. We don't want to see a MUPTI that's in place that has been gutted, that's no longer an effective tool, or that's just not politically a viable option going forward. And so given all those challenges, we would support suspending the MUPTI program further, so long as that suspension is paired with a broader, more comprehensive community process around what MUPTI needs to look like, and hopefully a process that can get some more support, because we think that this is a complicated issue. It's very hard for many people in the community to engage on it because it's dry, it's technical, it's boring. And so if we have time and a process that can engage more people and help people see the connections that we've seen with Envision Eugene and MUPTI and the role that we believe it plays, we think that could help produce a more well thought out, productive, effective tool. And so we would be willing to take the time to do that. We would just ask that if the suspension is continued, that a process like that be created and that we, the Chamber, be part of it. Thank you very much.
I close the public hearing and ask council if they have any comments. Councilor Zelenka?
I won't be at the meeting on Wednesday because of a conflict, but I support the suspension extension to the December 31st, and I agree with everything that Laura Potter said. I think that those are the laudable goals that we should be working towards with MUPTI.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you all. We'll go on to the next item. An ordinance concerning downtown and mixed-use developments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the council is scheduled to take action on a package of amendments that are intended to facilitate the type of development we want to see in our downtown, along our transit corridors, and in our core commercial areas. These amendments address long-standing concerns with our land use code, as well as issues identified through Envision Eugene, and are directed at aligning the land use code with desired downtown and mixed use and transit-friendly development.
Okay, we're going to put the motion out, and then I'll call on Councilor Taylor.
I move to adopt Council Bill 5096, an ordinance concerning downtown and mixed-use development.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. We talked before, or I did, some of us did, about how quickly we adopted some of the land use code update factors. And I said at the time I hoped that we would take more time when we changed them. And now we have a whole list of things to do quickly, again, without any public input, without putting much thought into them. And if I vote on this, there are 3 things that I want to have deleted, and I have 3 motions. So may I
Go ahead
make
with
one
your
now?
first motion, yep.
Okay, I'll just do one at a time. I move to delete the change to surface parking limitation. Number 2 on attachment A, AC 9.2161.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
And I think there was a good reason why we did this. We agreed that it's not good to, if we're changing anything, we need to think about why it was done in the first place. And it was done so that we don't encourage a lot of surface parking, it's a better use of land. What we said was, if you have more than 20 spaces, that should be enclosed. And I think that was a good idea. I don't think we should change it.
Councilor Brown?
I have a couple questions for staff. Does this provision apply to each tax lot in a single ownership parcel? You know, a lot of the parcels downtown, there might be 4 or 5, sometimes more tax lots. And I'm wondering, does this apply to the entire development parcel?
This applies to the entire development site, which would be if a person owned adjoining properties, that would be considered the development site.
If the same ownership?
Correct.
Okay. And then my understanding of it is that if you want to increase it from 20 to 40, that can be alley access only, and there's no curb cuts to the street. Is that correct?
That is the proposal before you. Correct.
What if there's a existing curb cut and they want a property owner wants to bump up to 40?
The intention would be that the only access they could have would be through the alley.
They would have to fill in the
Correct.
curb cut onto the street. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Zelenka?
So, 2 questions. So, I don't quite understand the rationale between having it be alley access only.
It was to maintain a pedestrian-friendly environment. I mean, we acknowledge that we're not looking to add more parking lots downtown, that they've really been kind of an evolutionary redevelopment scenario where a building comes down, a low-value building, and then eventually the site gets redeveloped. We wanted to maintain a pedestrian-friendly environment so that pedestrians didn't have to dodge additional driveways, that there would be landscaping on the exterior as well, the perimeter.
And the rationale for the overall increase, you mentioned that it was about land banking in part?
Correct. As we've seen development occur downtown, what we've been seeing, and I think the Link Community College campus is a good example. We see some former parking lots being converted into actual development, and this is a way to allow that to happen kind of incrementally. So while I think staff certainly agrees we do not want to see a proliferation of surface parking downtown. That's not the intent behind this. The intent is really to set up those properties to get the development that we want in the future when they're ready.
So I agree with that, but I don't see how this doesn't allow parking lots to proliferate as opposed to having them saved for development. Because this just allows them. They could be permanent.
It could. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. But I guess what we're seeing downtown is we're actually seeing momentum for redevelopment. We're seeing low-value buildings and vacant parking lots being redeveloped.
Okay.
Councilor Surratt?
So to Councilor Taylor's comment that we created these codes for a reason in the first place, well, actually, I guess my question is a little bit different than that. Can you offer some specific examples where a developer gave up on a project or had to significantly change a project because of the code as it stands now?
What's really hard to do is that we have a lot of people that come to the counter and ask us questions, and we have a lot of pre-development applications that don't actually become a permit. And it's typically in those situations where they learn about this development or this proposal and that it might, involve the project changing. I, unfortunately, cannot on the fly come up with any specific examples where this has affected an actual development, but I do know that over the years we have heard about it from numerous developers and from numerous property owners.
Thanks. Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. Please put these into context for us a little bit better. These changes are going to allow the process for Envision Eugene to work better. Do I have that right? For us to realize the goals that we have set for the density level we want?
Correct. I mean, it's about trying to, align our land use code with our desired development.
What happens if we don't do it, or conversely, you've seen the amendments that Councilor Taylor has here. What are the likely consequences if we were to adopt her motions?
In this one in particular, I mean, there are, if you think of if you can think of a low-value building that is downtown right now that maybe is vacant or underutilized, and there are several of those downtown, that They would like to remove the building, keep it in parking for a period of time until they are able to set themselves up to redevelopment. At this point, they would probably leave their building there, would be my understanding, or they would if they did tear the building down, they would need to make sure that nobody parked where that building was, so it would be a vacant, empty lot.
So they wouldn't tear it down, likely, is that correct?
I don't know. I don't know the economics of that, but they would either leave it there, or they would tear it down, but it would still remain as, a vacant lot.
Okay, what's the importance then of making sure that people can tear down a building right now, that they can create this?
I think so. There's some interim use on that site, to allow them to be able to tear down the building.
I'm asking
to
help us connect the goals. How does that help us further envision Eugene?
It sets up that lot for the kind of development we want to see. I'm thinking of one property specifically that has the building. It has an existing building on it. It's a low-value building. It is set back from the street. There's parking between the street and that building. If they, want to maintain the number of parking spaces they have, they're not going to tear that building down and redevelop the site. And this is probably a property where we would like to see some sort of redevelopment happen. We'd like to see the building come closer to the street so there's an active pedestrian environment. We'd like to see higher intensity of use.
In other words, you want to see some of these it's not non-compliant, but I can't think of a better word, non-conforming to the Envision Eugene plan. You want to see some of these buildings down, and this is an easier way to get it done, right?
That's one way to put it.
Okay.
Councilor Zelenka.
So I was going to ask two questions. The first one is, so given what you just said, maybe you could summarize for me what the problem is that we're trying to fix with this reduction in regulation.
Are you just one question at a time here?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. Like you've heard, this was put into the code to discourage surface parking lots, which on its face makes a whole lot of sense. That's not the reason we're asking to change it. What it has been an issue for those sites to redevelop. It doesn't account for that typical evolutionary process where the building can come down, the site can be used for parking, and then it gets redeveloped. Either the site has to remain with that vacant building on, which can be an attractive nuisance, or they tear the building down and then there's just kind of rubble or a demoed vacant lot. This would allow them to clean up the lot, use it in the interim, and then redevelop the lot.
So you seem to have a specific example in mind. Do you?
I have a couple in my mind, yeah, but I don't know what their development plans are.
Well, give me an example of where this might be a good example of where this could create that opportunity.
There is one property. It is on West 11th. Actually, there's several along West 11th where the properties are set back somewhere near the Catholic Church. There's some properties where, actually on both sides of West 11th, the storefronts or the buildings are set back quite a bit from West 11th. There's parking between the buildings and the street. They're fairly low-value buildings. I don't know what their potential, what their development plans are, but you could envision those, that particular area with a higher, better use.
And the boundary for this particular?
It is a C3 zoning.
In the downtown?
Downtown, and then actually the C3 is a block area over by campus as well.
Right. Okay. And
landscape standards.
The second question.
Timer.
Oh.
I wanted to jump in on
Sure.
that, if that's okay. You can imagine that it's a little bit awkward to say on Metro TV that we've identified a property or we've seen a property or any of you have seen a property that you don't like that would meet that standard. I think what we're trying to say is there's going right now
Especially
the
if
way
they didn't know they wanted
to
to go.
Right. So if somebody comes in and talks to us, that's a different deal than just recognizing. And I think what Alyssa said, I know when I first got on the job, the people that are working at the counter with property owners are keeping an ongoing log of issues. They have notes on the pages of, someday if we do a code change, this would be something important, because the way the code is written now is a good direction we want to go around transportation and multi-modes and parking, but it's creating a barrier for that in-between stage. If you have something on your property that's probably going to need to be torn down in order to redevelop it, if they can't do that ahead of time, it's really hard to get that redeveloped. The cost of it is high. So it's just, I don't see this being, people are going to go around downtown and tear down buildings and put in parking lots. That won't make sense economically. It might have made sense 20 years ago, but it doesn't make sense now. What we're trying to do is not have the code be a barrier to something better happening on the site, and this is something that we think is a barrier to something better happening on the site. And if suddenly we had, 30 demo permits, I think we would be saying, wait a minute, that's not what was intended. I think this will be a very slightly used tool.
So the follow-on question would be, so how would, if the code allows it, how would you prevent if you had 30 demo sites show up next month, a month after we pass this? What could you say? The code says you could do it.
Right.
So we could end up with permanent parking lots, and I'm trying to connect, I understand what you're saying about the stages of development, but I'm also trying to connect the dots between what this does and the Envision Eugene goal of having higher density downtown, when there's a possibility these could end up being permanent parking lots, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish in Envision Eugene. So I'm torn here between that possibility and the possibility of having an interim step or stage in the property life cycle to get to a higher use and better use and more dense use.
I can't give you that exact answer, but I can tell you the trend on surface parking in the downtown is going down. The surface parking lots are disappearing. So I don't see, if you look at what the economics are and what the demand is, it's not to go flat. So that would surprise me. That would be something that would be not what the trend is showing. The trend is showing redevelopment.
Okay.
But I understand the concern.
Councilor Brown.
I was just wondering, in order of value to the tax assessor, it would probably be building on a lot surrounded by parking, and then maybe it would go down to vacant building that hasn't been rented out for a long time. Do they pay less tax if it's vacant?
Don't know the answer to that.
And then it probably drops down to like derelict building, becoming an eyesore, not maintained, perhaps slowly deteriorating, maybe approaching a public danger, and then the lowest value would be parking lot. Is that?
In terms of what the tax assessor was?
Yes, yeah. And then it will return to the Eugene General Fund. Right. So it would probably be something like that. I guess I'm just having a kind of hard time understanding why, if you tore the building down, that would somehow encourage future development. It seems like if you're going to develop a lot, you're ready to go. You knock the building down and you excavate if you're going to do that and get going and then meet the parking standards for your new building. I'm just having a hard time saying this is a big benefit is all.
Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. In the context of all the mixed-use development amendments, it's to me, and this is the first of what is a longer conversation, and it's kind of a Goldilocks and the Three Bears kind of concept. It's not too soft, it's not too hard, it's just right. And I think what I'm hearing is the current structure is too hard. Folks are having a hard time using it. And what you're trying to do is not go all the way to too soft, which is they're going to tear all the buildings down and put it in surface parking lots all over Eugene. That's a fear. I mean, it could happen. But what you're trying to get to is we're trying to tweak it just enough to make it just right. Not so far as to have them tear down all the buildings and put in surface lots, which I don't think would happen even if the code would allow it. But I think the concern is they're having a hard time envisioning just right. They see you going from too hard all the way to too soft. They're saying, I don't see this in-between stage. So we're having to kind of operate on trust. And trying to build flexibility into a system is always an exercise in trust, because the more flexibility you build in, the more trust you have to assume. If I make hard and rigid rules, I don't have to trust you, period. You just do it, take it or leave it. But what we're finding is the development doesn't occur in a very efficient or very effective way if we have a take it or leave it system. On the other hand, if you say, come and build whatever you want to, it's fine with me, that's also not what we're going to want. What we need to be assured is that the degree of amendment you're proposing here is, in your professional opinion, not going too soft, it's just right. It's not going to provoke a lot of what we don't want, what you don't want, and what we don't want. And that's, I think, what we're struggling to try to hear, is how are these just right and not going too soft?
I'm hearing that, and I think that's why on this one in particular, just remembering that the entire package of code amendments, the question that was asked was, what's it going to take? What are some things we can do to make sure that this vision that the community has said they want for downtown comes true? And these are some things that have come up as either being new things or problems that have been out there. So my professional opinion is we'll see very few of these. It's moving us in the right direction, and I believe if we had 30 applications come in the next week, as soon as it's approved, I'm looking back at Glenn and he's like, why is she looking at me? I'm sure we could do some sort of emergency measure that said, wait a minute, we don't want downtown torn down. I just don't see that happening. I think it'll be very infrequently used.
Councilor Zelenka?
So help me with I believe developers operate with their economic self-interest in mind. So I'm trying to figure out the economics of this and getting to that interim stage of development where the Vans Lake land is vacant. I understand vacant land is easier to develop than land that has something on it, but I'm kind of struggling with why does someone go, if I own this lot and it has a building on it and it's vacant, why would I spend the money to demolish it and create a parking lot and go to the expense of doing that, but also pay less taxes? I don't think that equates. And then there's also maybe some revenue in there. So is that the equation, the economics equation that makes sense to be able to give you the right signal to do that?
I don't know the exact economics of that. I mean, I think some of this is, when you talk about developer, I'm thinking individual property owner in some cases. It's not, I think that these issues that have come up by individual property owners at the counter, not a development issue for Eugene. So I'd have to get more information for you on that.
Right. What I'm trying to get is what's the economic case for getting a land to that interim stage that you were talking about, as opposed to just having it go from vacant land to demolish and redevelop in one step?
I think maybe because if you're a single property owner, and I'm speculating here, but if you're an individual property owner, you're not a developer, that interim step allows you to generate some revenue as you're kind of progressing your project, as opposed to having all the cash and capital to just demo and rebuild. That's not going to be true for everybody.
Revenue from parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Ready to vote? Betty?
I just want to say, remember the Sears site and the Astor's site.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor of this motion, please
Of Betty's
indicate.
motion.
Betty's motion. 1, 2, 3. In opposition? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion does not pass. Want to do the next motion?
Yes. I move to delete the change to landscaping standards, which was number 4 on attachment A, AC 9.2171.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Again, I think there was a reason for having landscaping standards, and I don't think we should hastily repeal this. I think it makes, if there is, we need open space as well as intense development. And I think that what we did, I think it was done for a good reason, and I don't think we should hastily change it.
Other comments or questions? Councilor Zelenka?
So this is in section 2171. So I wasn't, so there's multiple things that are going on in this section. There's also the height limitation areas. Does that relate?
It's on page 6 of the ordinance under subsection 5, landscaping.
Okay, right. So when we were talking about this previously, you said that it was that this could eliminate a redundant need for landscaping requirement?
Well, and that was in the second. So there's actually 2 amendments that fall under the landscaping amendments. The first would allow for the C2 zone within the downtown to provide 5% of the site in landscaping as opposed to the 10% that's required right now. C3, which is our core, is not required to provide any landscaping. The second part of the amendment is subsection C, and that's about landscaping beds in the front between a building and a street. And currently, downtown, you're not required to have a landscaping bed between the building and the street. However, if you decide that you wanted to put some landscaping there, you're required to have a 7-foot wide bed that's landscaped to our basic landscape standards, which includes a tree every 30 feet.
And how would you do that if you only had a 8-foot sidewalk?
You'd provide 1 tree, and you'd have to have your 7 feet of a bed, and then including a tree within that.
And so that would only apply in the downtown area?
No, that one actually would be provided. C would actually apply citywide, but it's not typical to require a landscaping bed in the commercial zone in that front yard. So this requirement applies when somebody chooses to have a landscaping bed in the front yard.
Okay, so the first part that you were referring to initially was in section A, where
Correct.
It says within C2, a minimum of 5% of the development site shall be landscaped with living plant materials, and no minimum landscaping is required in the C3
Right. So
zone.
currently, no minimum is required in the C3, and 10% is required in the C2 downtown. So the only change would be for the C2, which would reduce the required from 10% to 5% of the site.
And so this is related to Envision Eugene. How does that make?
It provides more flexibility. It provides actually kind of a transition from downtown. I mean, if you think about the C3 zone where people, I think I mentioned this last week, but in the C3 zone, folks are not required to do landscaping, yet when you look at the buildings that have been built recently, they all have required landscaping. This kind of allows for a graceful transition to the C3 zone to require some landscaping, but perhaps not the whole 10%. And it gives them more of the site to work with, to develop, to redevelop. Yes, more densely.
I don't see how eliminating landscaping gets you more dense, but I think it just makes it less livable.
Yeah,
create a bigger footprint on the lot.
It gives you more area to develop.
Councilor Surratt?
So I appreciate Councilor Taylor encouraging us to think more about these changes, but I won't support this motion. I think this explanation actually shows that we might get more landscaping if we don't require it to be a minimum of 7 feet width if someone decides they want to put landscaping in their C3 zoned lot. So, because I think that is so prescriptive and doesn't necessarily make any rational sense. Why not 5 feet? Why not 12 feet? So I support the change in that C section there to get rid of that very prescriptive thing that if you're going to put in landscaping, which is not required, but if you're going to put it in, we're going to make you do it in this very particular way. I understand that we want to have a livability standard for what's being developed, but I think making it more flexible to achieve that is more positive. And then I'm all right with reducing the minimum from 10% to 5% in terms of overall landscaping within the C2 zone. I think that seems like a rational change as well.
Councilor Clark.
Part of the issue that concerns me with our conversation is how much work we've done around Envision Eugene. I remember being virtually guaranteed that we'd be done with that in about 2 years' time, back in '07. And here we are 7 years later, and we're still arguing out stuff. And we went into the conversation based on the promise that if we'd work together on this, we would come up with a better result, and that we would be working towards all of our best outcomes. I'm really going to be extremely disappointed and want to go back again to the days where we solved these sort of things at the legislative level. If we're going to pick apart every single way for us to get to this place and make the essence of what we've created an impossibility to get done and developed. We, in my opinion, haven't added anywhere near the amount we should to the UGB for both residential and industrial. But what we've done is, through the wisdom of working together, say we're going to build more densely. If we're going to pick apart all the ways in which we're going to do that and say essentially that we don't need to, I think that's going to be frustrating to a lot of people. Thank you.
I think we're ready to vote on this one. All those in favor of this motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3. In opposition? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does not pass.
Okay, one more motion.
Okay.
I move to delete the removal of traffic impact analysis, number 7 on attachment A, EC 9.8670.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
And I think this may be the most important of all, that we definitely should have a traffic impact analysis on anything that we do. It's something you should do before you do the building instead of or the development, instead of waiting till later and then trying to solve the problems. And as for taking time, we're rushing through this. We haven't had any public input. We heard in a speedy way, we heard at a recent meeting about all these changes, and now we're speedily adopting them. And I just think we need more time to think about the negative consequences.
Councillor Evans?
This is one I agree with Councillor Taylor on, and I'll tell you why. I've been in this town for 27 years. I've seen commercial, residential developments that have not fully taken in the transportation impacts that come along later after those developments are placed into, where we want them at. And subsequently, we end up having transportation congestion and situations that we can't go back and fix easily. I think that we need to have a TIA. I think that TIA is important. I think that we skimmed over it when we talked about the riverfront development with eWeb and didn't really get into an in-depth conversation about how transit, pedestrian, bicycles, all of our multimodal issues were going to be addressed through that development plan. And I would hate for us not to have that analysis in place when we're looking at other developments downtown and going out to the outer parts of the community as well.
Hey, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you. This is kind of the due diligence part of the conversation, and I could see of all the motions, this one might have the potential to be supportable, only from the standpoint that knowledge is better than not having knowledge, and that doing a TIA gives you knowledge. And I understand the argument that, well, probably the knowledge wouldn't really tell us something we don't already know, or wouldn't really change the state of things. But it might affect other decisions around transit or other kinds of things. I don't even know. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm kind of making this up as I go. So a question I would have, which would be an impact for the developer, is if you did a TIA, typically what does that cost and how long does it take for them as part of that process?
There's a city, well, they have to pay a private consultant. Actually, backing up, a TIA is only triggered when a development is proposed to exceed 100 trips during a peak hour, which typically for downtown would be sometime between 7 and 9 and sometime between 4 and 6. So like we've only had 2 that have been triggered in the last 12 years.
Right.
But a developer would have to pay a consultant, and I've heard that runs anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000, depending on probably more on the higher end typically, but just depending on the level of demand or the level of analysis that needs to occur. And then there's a city application fee. It's roughly $4,000, but I don't have the exact number in my head. And it is a land use application process, so I mean at minimum, 3 to 5 months.
Okay.
And the 2 that have occurred for downtown, at the end of that, it was determined that they did not trigger the need for any transportation improvements.
And so what we're specifically talking about is removing the requirement if there's more than 100 cars. In other words, if it's less than 100, they don't have to do one anyway.
Correct.
So we're actually talking about a pretty significant number of cars, 100 cars.
In a peak hour.
In a peak hour.
Mm-hmm.
But what I am hearing is that there is not an unsubstantial financial cost, and it could take a number of months to have that impact analysis done. And when it was all said and done, you might say, no impact, nothing's going to happen. But we don't know that for sure. Would there be an upper limit for the number of cars? In other words, it's more than 100, but less than 500, less than 1,000?
No, currently it's anything. If it's over 100 during that peak hour, then they're required to do the traffic impact analysis.
Would this remove that altogether?
Only for properties within the downtown plan area, with the exception of the properties within the eWeb master plan.
Is it possible, and like I say, I'm making this up, so you can tell me if it's not possible. Is there a way, I'm trying to find the just right, if you were to say, let's leave this in place for now, but is there a way to do an alternative kind of traffic impact analysis that doesn't require the full meal deal? Can you do something that was still provided information, still provided knowledge, didn't cost you $10,000 and take 6 months? Is that even possible to do? Maybe it's not possible. Tell me if it's
I'm
not.
going to consult with the city engineer on that one.
It's possible. I don't know how I would define that, but it's. I don't know that it would be valuable if you did that analysis and found out there was something that you wanted a developer to mitigate. I don't think you would have the clear and objective standard that would come out of a traffic impact analysis.
Right, but what if, and this is kind of like a level 1, level 2, level 3 environmental analysis. What if you had the equivalent of like a level 1 TIA that could be done relatively quickly, relatively inexpensively, and if it didn't raise any red flags, then okay, we're fine, let's keep moving forward. But if this level 1 TIA said, there's a potential, there might be then that might trigger to say, well, we need to actually do a more extensive TIA. It would at least give you that level of due diligence and protection. For, let's say, the majority of cases, the level 1 was more than enough and gets the job done relatively inexpensively, relatively quickly. And then only when those instances that trigger it, you then could say, we want something more extensive. I'm spitballing here, but it seems like completely getting rid of the requirement is something that sounds like it could be too soft, may go too far. But I don't want to keep in place something that is so costly and so time-consuming and really not necessary in a lot of cases. Would it be possible, if we left this in place for now, could we pursue the possibility of exploring maybe whether it's possible to create a level 1 kind of a TIA thing? I'm just offering that up as a suggestion.
Well, 2 things. One, that's essentially what the code is now, because you're looking at the type of development and what other developments across the country, what type of trips those would generate, and if you hit that 100-trip threshold, then you go to the level 2. So that's essentially what the code does now, is it gives you that more theoretical look based upon land use categories and other typical developments, and if you hit that, based upon trip generating characteristics and the size of the development, and if you hit that 100-trip threshold, then you do a more rigorous analysis, and you may, through that more rigorous analysis, find that you overestimated that 100 trips because there's ways to do alternative calculations if it's a unique type of development that doesn't fit neatly within one of the standards in the engineering manuals.
So there is a level 1 that's done at 100 cars or less?
No, I'm saying the 100 car is already a de facto level 1.
Level 1.
Because you're basing that decision on whether to do a TIA or not on an actual analysis, but on traffic generation characteristics of different type of development and the size of the development. And then so if you hit that threshold, then you get triggered into the full-blown TIA.
Yeah. I might be interested in pursuing maybe there is some way to mitigate that second step.
The other aspect of it that this change in the code does within that downtown area is it drops the level of service. So across the city we have a level of service or a mobility standard, the A through F, with A being free flow and F being congested. So most of the city is at level of service D, and the Central Area Transportation Study, which includes downtown, is a level of service E. So this would drop the level of service E to F. And so a traffic impact analysis doesn't have any value if your level of service is F, because you can't get below it.
Any worse?
So it's not going to. So the TIA is the traffic impact analysis to determine the impact and then mitigate that impact to the level of service that you've adopted for a particular area. So if you've dropped your level of service, because it's not uncommon for downtowns to have level of service F in other communities, and congestion isn't viewed as bad in a downtown area, it's more of a sign of a healthy downtown. So if you've dropped your level of service, which this proposes to do in the downtown, then a TA, traffic impact analysis, doesn't have the value, because you're not going to require a developer to mitigate, because you're in essence saying congestion's okay in a downtown.
Another rationale for this is that downtown really is unique when compared to other parts of town. I mean, the gridded pattern, that we already have sidewalks, there's ample transit, and it's really unlikely that we're going to see new intersections, or street alignments or widths or new lanes that we might see in other parts of town, which is another reason why TIA hasn't been working well as a tool, because what would we require a developer to do downtown?
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. That's where I was that's why I've been kind of listening to the beginning of the conversation. I was hoping we'd get to that point a little sooner, which is that the purpose of the TIA is to mitigate those bad impacts, but you can't do that downtown because you can't widen the roads, you can't build new intersections, you can't make it better, right? No matter what it measures out to. So there's no point to do it except to slow down development and to make it more expensive and make it less likely to happen. It's the only thing that will occur from this. This is what I was addressing earlier when I said I'd hate to see us go about the process of making all these goals we've said we want to do to be more dense harder to actually accomplish through, in my opinion, silliness of not accepting what staff is suggesting. We're going to have to accept that we're going to be more congested. We've already made that decision. The decision to build more densely and not to expand the UGB has necessitated that. Even in residential, Beltline Delta is a failed facility. The state says so, everybody says so. The congestion and the volume is beyond what that facility was ever designed to hold. It's going to be fixed and addressed, but even then, their capacity and volume estimates leave it at right near a failed facility, even after fixed. So instead, ODOT's going to change the standards and say we're willing to accept more congestion. And that's what we're going to have to live with, unless we want to add more space to our community at the UGB out the outside. Congestion is going to be necessary.
Councilor Zelenka.
So, following on a little bit more silliness, what would be the types of mitigation that we would see as a result of a TIA in downtown? What could they possibly do?
Well, for example, at Autzen or at Matt Court, there were traffic demand measures. So providing employees with bus passes or putting in more opportunities for, and it's hard to do downtown because there's already good transit and good bike and ped access. So you can put in traffic demand management, and I'm not sure if we've had, I can't think of an example where there's caps on trips. So a development can't be any bigger or can't generate any more trips than the level of service would allow.
How would you do that?
Well, so I'll say this, and then Alyssa can correct me if I'm wrong. So if you can't meet a level of service standard or mitigate it, then your development couldn't be approved.
Or it would have to, if it was 10,000 square feet of development that tipped it, maybe you'd have to either make your building smaller or have less trips somehow.
So
Be less attractive.
basically what you're saying is that even if the TIA was triggered and it created a lower level of service, there really is nothing we would make the developer do to mitigate that in the downtown core, because the things that we could do would be more bus passes, traffic demand management, but those things either exist already or wouldn't work downtown.
Right. I mean, in other parts of town, we require signals, whether it be a stop sign or an actual light signal. It might be a new lane, a right-hand only lane. It might be, a turning medium. But you're not going to see those in the downtown. I mean, we're not going to see, new lanes being created. I'm pretty sure every intersection has a signal. So it's just, our tool. We've used most of the tools already downtown.
Right. So to get at what you were talking about, Chris, there's really nothing that ends up occurring with it as a result of a negative TIA downtown. This doesn't apply to any place else outside the downtown boundary area.
Correct. It would only apply within the downtown plan area minus the EWEB master plan properties.
But what do you mean minus the EWEB's not in this boundary?
If you look at the attached, EWEB's actually within the downtown plan boundary. The map that was created for this traffic impact analysis area does not include.
Right, so it excludes the EWEB area.
Correct.
So it comes up across the area around the railroad tracks. Okay.
Councilor Surratt?
So the TIA is only done to see how vehicle traffic is going to impact?
Correct. It's completely about automobile traffic vehicles.
So, for example, when the capstone was being proposed, there were concerns about pedestrian conflicts with senior folks or people of limited mobility and students and bikes and skateboards. That doesn't get pulled into this at all.
We do have access management standards that that talk about or require driveway locations to help prevent those kinds of conflicts. I do know Capstone had done an alley vacation, and so there were conditions about pedestrian and bicycle access as a result of them relocating the alley.
But that was unrelated to a TIA?
Correct.
Yeah. So I actually can see one potential development where a TIA might be very appropriate within this map area, and that's the Oregonian Credit Union site right there on Mill where the Ferry Street Bridge comes down. So, it seems to me that there might be potential there for a development that would really impact traffic in such a way that it's not excluded, it's in the map. So I don't know if you could think about an example there of a new signal or a new crosswalk possibly implicated by a TIA. It's Mill and 8th.
Well, first it would need to be a development that did trigger the need for a TIA. For instance, Lane Community College didn't trigger the downtown campus. Neither did the Center Court building or the Woolworth building. Neither of those triggered. So it has to be a larger building like the Northwest Community Credit Union building of 70,000 square feet. That did trigger a TIA. So first we would have to assume that it was a building of that size.
So they already did it.
Who already did it?
Northwest Credit Union.
No, that's a different site. I was talking about Oregonian Credit Union. They've shut down their branch there. I think there's probably some, I mean, I don't have any, I'm not speaking from any inside knowledge. I just would assume there's some plan for that property. So anyway, thanks. That's what I wanted to know.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So downtown is currently at service level E, is that correct?
Correct.
Well,
And-
that's a mobility standard, but it operates at a much higher level of service.
And then if we pass this, then it goes down to service level F?
That's correct.
And I don't know, it seems like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if it's level E and a traffic impact analysis is conducted, but then if we make it so that you don't have to conduct one by dropping the service level to F, it seems like we're creating we're saying, well, we don't need it at level F. We do at E, but not at F. So let's do F, just so that we won't ever have to do a traffic impact analysis again in the zone. So it seems like kind of strange reasoning to me. It's an observation.
Okay.
I mean, you change the goal line so you don't have to do something that you currently have to do, and I don't see any good reason to change it.
Councilor Pryor.
Thanks. So now I'm thinking in terms of payoff, and what I'm hearing is, at least within downtown, you could require a TIA, but the payoff is you can't really do anything with it, at least in the most part. Now, in Councilor Surratt's example, which may be a good one, you already know how many cars are projected, because that's the trigger, right? So you already have a projected number of cars. Is it possible, without doing a TIA, you say, okay, a potential development in this area looks like it's going to generate 300 cars during peak time. Would you have to have a TIA in order to say we need to mitigate that somehow? Or would you just know because it's 300 cars you probably need to do something to mitigate that? Is there any mechanism that allows you to say, hey, we need to fix this?
You know, it is really dependent on that analysis that is submitted, because it depends where those cars are going, where they're coming from, what intersections they're going to.
Yeah.
So it's not something you can, guess in that case. Do you have more to add to that?
No.
But what you're saying is that for the bulk of the development downtown, since that infrastructure is already in place, you could require a TIA in most instances, and you wouldn't get anything for it. You'd get $10,000 in 6 months, and nothing would happen. That's a cynical way of saying it, but in most cases, that's kind of what you're saying would happen.
Right. I mean, given the circumstances downtown, we see really limited value in terms of what we could ask somebody to do, given the existing infrastructure.
Would it be possible at some point, if something did come along that raised a red flag, where we could deal with that individually? Say the example that Councilor Surratt brings up. If we looked at something and when we were going, this may have a challenge, is that something that could be dealt with individually?
We are, as I mentioned before, we do have access management standards that do allow us, if it happened to be a driveway location that was problematic or, it needed to be right in, right out, that is something that we can handle through the access management. Otherwise, it's, us having a conversation with that developer and, trying to work out a solution if they're agreeable.
Okay. There might be mechanisms to do that.
Yeah, the code authority would still be there for the traffic engineer to address a safety issue.
Okay.
For example, which would you could change an access from a free left in or right in to making it right in only, if it was addressing a safety issue. So that
a lot of them would probably be safety kinds of things, I would imagine.
But what you wouldn't be able to address is a project to increase capacity or to maintain capacity.
Yeah, because even in that area, a lot of that infrastructure is already in place. Okay, you've persuaded me. From a payoff standpoint, I guess the payoff is not really there. So, yeah, I'm persuaded. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
I'm almost there.
Come on, join the party, brother.
So to answer George's question, if you were at level B and you did a TIA in downtown and found that it triggered it and that it was going to reduce it to C, there still isn't anything you would do.
That's correct.
There's nothing you could do to prevent C from going from B to C. So it's not just going down to F, it's anywhere on the continuum. There's nothing you can do downtown that a TIA would require you to do, so what's the point?
There you go.
Except for one place maybe. So the lot across from the shed behind the yellow old IHOP building, that whole area there is a half a block that's developable. That's a parking lot right now. And, hypothetically, what if someone decided to put a Whole Foods there or something like that, which would create a lot of trips? Would that trigger some mitigation?
You mean under the current code or under what's proposed?
Current code. Under what's proposed, they wouldn't have to do it, so no.
Again,
I can imagine a thing like a Whole Foods would create quite a bit of trips, way more than 100.
So if they're, I can't imagine a physical improvement that they would do, so they would have to mitigate if they drop the level of service from whatever it is now to, they'd have to drop it to F and then bring it back to E.
How?
And I don't know, you would have a smaller development under the current code.
Built.
So we would require them to do a smaller development that would require them to then show that they could come back to E?
No, they wouldn't drop. They would size their development so they wouldn't drop below E if they weren't able to mitigate it.
Mayor, if I could add on.
Yep.
So if that's the piece of property that you're concerned about, in order to do a half...
The only vacant one left.
So in order to do a half-block development, they're likely going to need to come to the council for an alley vacation. As part of an alley vacation, we have lots of leverage. So if that's the site that you're worried about, then even though we wouldn't have leverage, because this provision would be gone if the council adopts it tonight, they're not going to be able to do a half-block development without an alley vacation, and you get to decide whether it's in the public interest to grant that. And so if there are traffic issues, or if you don't know if there are traffic issues, we can say, as part of the alley vacation, the council's going to want to know what the traffic impact is, so go do an analysis so that we can tell the council what the impact would be.
And likely a quarter block isn't going to trigger a TIA, unless it were a tower.
Okay, Councilor Taylor?
So you say that LCC did not trigger a traffic analysis, right?
Correct.
And it would have to be something really big.
Correct.
And it could be that it was something that is not appropriate for the site. I don't see anything wrong with, I see everything right with keeping it, nothing wrong. It's not going to affect anything that we want to have. If the traffic problems would be too great, then maybe it isn't a suitable development. And as for the amount of money, if you're doing something that big, this is nothing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're ready to vote on this. All those in favor of Councilor Taylor's motion, please indicate. 1, 2. On opposition, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It does not pass, so none of the motions passed, and so we're back to the original motion. Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, a question about the pages. The nodal overlay language and the transit-oriented development.
Really?
Pages 20 and 21. So this was added. This was language that was added in here. Both these paragraphs, 31 and 32.
Hold on, I have to find the right page here.
Page 20 and 21.
I don't have the same. What is it on the ordinance? Can you give me the number of the ordinance?
Section 16 in 9.8030. Section
Page
8.
12 and 13 of the ordinance.
That's what I needed
12
to
and 13.
Okay.
20.
So section 31 and 32 is what you're referring to?
Correct.
So, yeah, currently, if someone is within one of those two overlay zones and wants to request an adjustment to one of the development standards, the only criteria that they have to meet is they have to address the purpose statement of those zones, which are fairly vague. And the purpose statement of those zones doesn't tell us what kind of development, it doesn't tell a developer what kind of development we want to see. And so the intent of adding this criteria is to really to guide that development. So even though they might be asking for some flexibility to one standard, that the rest of the development is actually the type of development that we want to see.
And who decides whether or not it can be changed?
An adjustment review is a planning director decision.
Okay.
It does require public notice.
All right.
Okay. Ready to vote? Yeah,
I have a question, Mayor.
Okay.
I am kind of ambiguous about the one element that the planning commissioners tied on 3 to 3, the removal of the requirement to have commercial space on the bottom floor of a multifamily housing. The reason is I think that was a good provision. I know that one of the early multifamily developments downtown had a problem for several years finding stable tenants. It kind of bounced back and forth. That they're pretty almost full now, and the reason I kind of have a little bit of a problem with it is because and this would be along at mixed-use areas, nodal developments along transit corridors, not just downtown.
Correct.
It's like pretty much anywhere in town, basically.
In the C2, which is our community. Yeah.
C2. Okay. Well, and then there was discussion about horizontal development. Like, okay, we can have all housing here and all housing here, and then somebody somewhere will build commercial in that zone, but we don't know. We really don't know that. It could just all be housing. And the reason I kind of have a problem with it is then what happens to the idea of the 20-minute neighborhood if it's just all housing and no commercial? And it could be in the same position, an area that's already maybe in a food desert and maybe in a service desert. It's not just food. There's other services that aren't scattered around town. And so that seems like that element will just encourage that and not do anything to change it. I guess that's more of a statement than anything else. But I realize sometimes goals conflict, but that's one where I kind of side with them. The commissioners who said no, keep it in. Thanks.
Okay. Ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in opposition. 2, it passes. And with that, we are done with the business of the evening. Thank you.
Tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yep.
Tomorrow at 9 a.m.
That's a whole